So now we're going to have a roundtable for the group for our SaaS best practices, and we're going to go through this pretty quickly. Just top ideas that you guys have, and appreciate you doing this for everybody. And so, first of all, best tip or biggest challenge with SaaS. Anybody want to jump in? This is what I call the lightning round. Just best tip on SaaS or biggest challenge.
The best tip I would say is that that it's negotiable. Just about that, but you have to understand what levers you have to pull here with the vendors. So when you're going through and looking at whether it's term or whether it's whether it's recognition or whatever, and how and understand when their reporting cycle is, end of the quarter, end of the year, they're more willing to deal at that point. So you can negotiate with SaaS vendors, especially if you're new to that vendor.
That's interesting. That's a great tip. Does that include Microsoft? Because I hear that Microsoft's pretty tough.
My company does negotiate with Microsoft, but I don't know how much we get. I don't know how responsive they are as compared to some of the others. I'm not involved in that. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think related to the Microsoft comment is understanding your usage and their pricing model. So some vendors charge by number of users, some by how much data or usage of the service. So understanding where you fit, so which is going to be most advantageous to you.
Yeah.
Can be very helpful. I mean, I think Microsoft is in that way similar, as in how they bundle things or looking at different bundles of services can have a pretty dramatic impact on the pricing. And they have that odd tiering structure too, which seems to evolve. So maybe that's a more generalized comment of really understanding how the vendor prices and how you intend to use their services, and so which approach is going to work best for you.
That makes sense. All right, good tip. Good tips. Any other tips or challenges?
You need someone paying attention to the monthly bills and how you're using the services, and if your consumption is much higher than you anticipated.
Mm-hmm. So tracking consumption to budget.
I really agree with that. I think an overall vendor management is really important too. So when do the contracts come due? Also, when do you need to do a review on their security and all? Because they're not necessarily obligated to tell you if they were, say, SOC 2 and now they're not anymore. That's up to you to make sure that they're compliant to where they're at. So having a process, a person or a team that watches over these, the more vendors you have, the harder that is, but it's important to do that.
Yeah, Tom, I might extend your comments to if it's like a software service, how are they maintaining it, patching it? I've had disruptions with key SaaS vendors that they do what they described as a simple weekend update, and then the services were messed up for several days. So that again, I think you raise really good points, but if it's a software, also what are their development practices? How do they test, deploy?
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Hey, these are all great tips. Yeah,
they don't always want to tell you, right? They don't always want to tell you, especially if they're not using standard methodology there. Mm-hmm. But it's important to know.
No, I find, like you said with the security, here's my certifications. I'm ISO certified on this and that, and that's all you need to know. I think you want to dig deeper than that.
Agreed.
Great. Anything else on this topic? Just Big tip.
Now, what you
challenge.
had, maybe it was on the next slide around
Yeah, I got
the vendor management, which Tom was going into. Vendor selection would be another.
Do we jump to that?
Well, we could, but the security is a big part of the vendor selection and understanding what data, what of my data are they managing, they're controlling, how is it secure, how things are administrated, etc. I think are critical because again, to Tom's comment, oh well, I'm SOC 2 certified. I mean, that's a nice start point, but that doesn't tell me everything I would like to know.
You got to dig deep whenever they tell you any of those things. That's what you're saying.
Yes, and security is critical. Everybody should be very concerned about it. How this application is going to play with other applications of mine, things of that type, I think are critical when you're looking at the different offerings and deciding which one to go with.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they really running this in the world? How do they support? Again, back to the like the patching. Like if they're just set up in one place, are you going to actually experience downtime while they're doing this?
Where they're running it is such a key question. I mean, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, you want to make sure they're in a country that subscribes to our, policies and things like that, right? So that's safe there.
Well, that's certainly, yeah. Go ahead, Tom, please.
I was just going to say, in some businesses, it's critical, right? So if your data has to run in the U.S. or if it has to be in Europe, you need to know exactly where that is, and not just their primary, but where's their backup as well. So because many times they'll fail over, and now you may be violating a contract or a law.
Yeah, without knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really say, "Oh, I didn't know." Our
right.
data, you put our data in China, and now China's got it. Just to use an extreme example,
Or it's not in China, but someone from that part of the world has gained access to it, and
yeah, especially if you do like David, you're involved in life sciences. That's critical stuff. Tom, you've got patents and stuff that you deal with, and it depending upon what you do. I mean, if you're doing any type of government work that has to be in the U.S. or, defense, for example, right? So it depends. You're right. It's important. All right, let's move on to the slides and let's do these quickly, like we did that other one. But just top tips. We don't have to answer everything in detail. Just, if something comes to mind. Investment and cost savings. How do you get ROI out of this? Like, how do you really
I
track
think
it?
In general, the executive team doesn't understand what it would take to deploy that service on-prem or on your own, and the variety of different skill sets that you would need to have, I guess, on contract. So I tend to do like apples and oranges of here's what the SaaS application's costing, here's what I believe it would cost us to deploy it, have an understanding of the different pricing models, maybe even from different vendors, and showing the differences there. And I think the other is usage versus costs. So kind of to your Microsoft question earlier, Alex, your usage tends to go up over time, but is your cost going up at the same rate? Or are you able to maintain your costs at the same?
Good point. Or does the rate start jumping even higher, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, that happens. You see that with key vendors today, where they're doing 20-30% increases. So, again, having a more complete story of just not that one slice that maybe you got a question on, but your overall spend and how it would compare in different scenarios.
Good. Anything else on this one?
Mhm.
Alan, you good?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right, good. All right. Security. What strategies do you implement to ensure data security and compliance in your SaaS applications? David, you already mentioned digging deeper and going through if they say I'm SOC, whatever, compliant. What do you mean by that? Who is? Those kind of questions. Anything else?
What I would add to that is around security around the data that's being stored inside there. So do you have the right profile set up? What kind of options do they give you to be able to narrow that down? We've got a number of customer contracts where they say only certain people can be looking at certain data, and so if the vendor can't support that, well, now you've got an issue, right? How do I still do business and honor the contract? So that's one that we don't always think about, but I think it's worth mentioning that can I slice and dice the data and assign it to users in the right way?
That's
Yeah,
great
I
insight.
would add to that, Tom, is what permissions does the application need? So if we look at things like agentic AI, often the vendor's assumption is you're going to give administrative permissions to like your Active Directory to the application, so it can create users, it can grant permissions, add it to Active Directory groups, and then that gets me very nervous because now I have this non-human account that can do everything,
Right.
and can do so very, very quickly. So yeah, I would add into like
I agree.
create me 1,000 system admin accounts, give them these privileges, and then now it's whack-a-mole. You trying to catch whoever got access to it. Yeah. So
That's a really big insight. I mean, all of a sudden AI can expand the problems exponentially
Mhm.
that you would have still would have had before, but now it's one or maybe one user. Now you got 1,000 users out there
Yeah.
Yes.
that shouldn't be there.
So the old adage of yes, we can do that, but should we?
I don't think we have time for that conversation.
No, that's a different roundtable. But I think again,
because the answer is no, we shouldn't.
What is the application going to need access to?
Yeah.
And how is that going to be managed? And yeah, the agentic AI is a more a beyond conversation, but
it's a big one. It's a big one.
It gets into that you may have been sold on capabilities that require privileged access.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Any other comments on this one? All right, let's keep moving. Vendor management. I think we kind of talked about this. Anything you want to add?
We did, but I suspect Allan has some comments from his recent MSP, around how am I communicating to the vendor, measuring their performance to contract. You have to have some sort of, I would recommend monthly touch point and such. Once you onboard a service, changing vendors is more difficult.
Well, from my experience, yeah, from the MSP side, it was. But yeah, you have to be careful what they think, because like with the MSP side, what we found is what they felt was our previous one. What they felt was important in measuring the relationship was not the same thing that we thought was important in measuring the relationship.
That's a really big insight.
Yeah, that was that was a major finding on our part, that we weren't on the same page with each other of what we thought was important. So yeah, making sure that you know what those key points are, so that you know what you're going to measure, and they know what you're going to measure against them. Because if they don't know it, then it's still a problem.
That's a great insight.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could apply that to any business or personal relationship too. Really.
Yeah.
I mean,
we sat this is a while back, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't even remember, 6-9 months, a year ago. We sat in a meeting, what was the annual review meeting, and they had a whole deck of slides showing us all the KPIs that they were measuring, and we were looking at them and going, that's great, doesn't mean anything to us. Those aren't the KPIs that are important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And they were dumbfounded.
And as a result, you made a change eventually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
For not just that reason, but that was
that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great insight.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other ones on this one? Keep moving. Training and adoption. Any tips on this area? Besides do it often?
Well, I think change management in general is one of the largest challenges, and it often is minimized in your planning. The users will want some sort of training,
yeah,
to conclude job aid help guides. You will uncover things that the way you implemented it and are not working well, and you need to adjust. The kind of back to the KPIs and metrics Allan was just talking about. I think having key individuals from the business engaged from the beginning is critical, and getting their feedback as early as possible.
I agree with all of that. I would add two things on here. One is, since you didn't develop it, you may have helped in configuring this, but since you don't develop it, you don't have the same level of expertise about it that you might if it was home developed in there. But there's an expectation of coming back and saying, how do I work this? What do I do? And so you have to be able to try to catch up. And I think that what David was saying about having the business buy-in, that can help if they understand and they know their pieces of it. The second thing I would say, and this has always been a challenge, is how do you keep up with all of their enhancements and things? And you may not have to take on them or start using them, but you want to be able to be aware of what changes they're making to the system, because I'm not asking for all of those changes, others are, and some of them are of value. So my ERP vendor just came out with a whole bunch of stuff about tariffs and how can you take advantage and be able to see the impacts. That's terrific, but that was not on any one of our plans to implement these new functionality that they rolled out, and yet we have to kind of assess quickly and try to see how you can take advantage of those. So you have to be nimble in a way, and you have to keep an eye out of what they're doing, because you don't want to get a stale system, but you also don't want it to be overwhelming.
It's great feedback. All right, well, that was the roundtable. Thanks everybody for doing it. I appreciate David, Tom, Allan. Appreciate you being part of the roundtable for everybody on SAAS best practices. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.